All right, sound is up. Check the gate. We're rolling. And action. Welcome to Unprofessional Productions Cooking 101 with Chris. We're going to be doing a thing called chicken piccata. It's a classic Italian dish. I'm going to show you how to do it two ways. The first way is piccata. The second way is called pomodoro. We're going to be doing it over pasta. We can do it over rice, and it's just as good. I've got some water starting to boil. For us, we're going to do just a regular spaghetti. If you're looking for a healthier option, you can also do super greens, basically vegetable pasta. So what we want to do is we want to prep our chicken. Okay, we just get a chicken breast from the store. Super simple. We're going to have a nice sharp knife. We're going to run it and we're going to create some thin cutlets. Just lay your hand flat on top. Run your knife. And they don't have to be perfect, but we do want them to be about this thick. Okay? The reason we do that is we want it to cook quickly and all the way through. We're actually just going to work with these two cutlets right here because this is going to be lunch for me and Rose. Once we have our cutlets all set out, we're going to salt and pepper them. Going to wash up real quick so that they don't cross-contaminate with any chicken germs, as it were. And as we do this, we'll talk about what makes a good recipe. The first thing that makes a good recipe is salt. You have to have salt in any recipe to make it good, basically. I use a salt cellar with kosher salt. The reason I use kosher salt is it's not a tiny little crystal. It's a bigger flake. It's easier to control the saltiness of stuff with it. I just pour some out into my salt cellar. I keep it there by the stove, and I pull it out for everything. First thing we're going to do is we're going to salt our pasta water. And I just do 2 good helpings. Okay? We grab some. All we do is sprinkle it right there on the chicken. Just like that. The second thing I use is a pepper grinder. We want to use fresh pepper whenever we can. If you use prepackaged black pepper, it's already been ground. All of the oils, all of the flavor is already starting to work its way out of it. If we use fresh peppercorns, and I use a peppercorn called Telecherry peppercorn because it's a little bit milder, and again it's easier to control the pepperiness of it. But we're just going to grind some pepper right onto those, just like that. We're going to grab a fork and we're going to flip them over because we want both sides to be happy. Alright? Now if I was using regular salt out of a salt shaker, these may be a little too salty, but because we're using that kosher salt, it's going to be just the perfect amount of saltiness. Okay, so we've got this prepped. What we're going to do is we're going to dredge it in a little bit of flour. Okay? So we're just going to take them. Okay, so we'll do this right over here. We'll put them in the flour. just like that. Second one. And they're ready to go, just like that. We're going to set this off over to the side so that we can get rid of our raw chicken cutting board. We'll wash up. And we will start to cook. The second element to a good recipe is heat. Now we need to think of heat in two ways. We're talking about physical heat, okay? If you think about a piece of bread, if you eat a piece of bread, it's pretty good. If you take that bread and you put some cheese in between it and some butter on top and you grill it and you make yourself a grilled cheese, how much better is it? We've added that heat element that's going to caramelize things and just make it so much better. Okay? The next element, we've got our salt, we've got our heat, we need fat. You need fat in any recipe. I use a squirt bottle of olive oil, just regular olive oil. I buy it in bulk at Costco, and I just buy the Kirkland olive oil. It's good olive oil. I keep the big bottle away in my pantry so that light doesn't get to it, it doesn't get too hot, it doesn't get rancid. I leave just a little bit out to cook with. Now your recipe is going to call for 2 tablespoons, okay? The recipe is a guide, all right? Everything that we do is going to be to taste. We're going to follow the guide, but we're also going to make sure that what we're cooking actually tastes good as well. And so I do a lot of my cooking by sight. I don't actually measure out to tablespoons. But what I do is I also make sure to follow a technique called mise en place. And what that means is everything in place. So everything I need for this recipe, I've already got measured out even before I turn on the heat. Because I don't want to turn on the heat, start cooking my chicken, and have to go over to the refrigerator and grab out the lemon juice and measure it out, and then go back over to the refrigerator and get the butter and measure it out. I want everything to be ready for me right here, right at my fingertips, so I can keep a close eye on what I'm actually cooking. Okay? This recipe uses white wine that I've got measured out, 1/4 cup. That wine is just a box of Chardonnay. It's nothing fancy. It's going to do what's called deglazing, and when we get there, I'll explain deglazing. We're using minced garlic, and this is 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. I don't mince my own garlic. I go to Albertsons, I buy a jar of minced garlic. It's ready to go. We're going to use capers. And again, these are the capers that I use. I tend to use a little more capers than what the recipe calls for because I really like the taste of capers. We're going to be doing chicken stock. This is 1/2 cup of chicken stock. The chicken stock I'm using today is made from better than bouillon. This stuff is great. It takes the place of a bouillon cube, but it is so much better than a bouillon cube. The other thing I use quite a bit is just original chicken stock from Kitchen Basics. In the carton, all you do is pop it open, measure it out, it's ready to go. You don't have to mix it like you do with the better than bouillon. Okay, we're going to finish it with a little more fat. Okay, we've got 2 tablespoons of butter. And then we're just going to garnish it with just a pinch of parsley. Now the last classical element that you need in any recipe We've got our salt, we've got our heat, we've got our fat. We're going to add a little bit of acid. We're going to be using just fresh lemons. And I am going to actually measure this out for you guys. What I do is I just leave the cut side up. I squeeze. The seeds should stay in. Okay. And this recipe actually calls for 2 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice. Now you can see that's not 2 tablespoons. So I also have Cecilia bottled lemon juice in my fridge so that I can bring this up to 2 tablespoons by sight. I also like lemony things, so it's probably a little bit more than 2 tablespoons. I'm going to set that off to the side. We're also going to use the other half of the lemon to create some fresh lemon slices and a little bit of lemon zest. So I'm going to slice those up over here on my clean cutting board. And you can cut them any thickness. They're going to go on top of the dish. Okay? And then what's left over in the rind, we're going to do a little bit of lemon zest. Lemon zest is the yellow portion of the lemon. I've got a little hand zester. Okay? You don't want to get down into the white part. The white part, the pith is what is, it goes beyond a little bit of sour to a taste that isn't as good as just the yellow part. The yellow part has all of the essential oils of lemon, and it's going to create a really bright lemony flavor. We're going to set that off to the side. Now, we've got everything mise en place, okay? We also have all 4 of our elements. Salt, heat, acid, and fat. Okay? Now that we've got everything ready to go, then, and only then, do I turn on my burner. I'm going to be doing a little higher than medium. Not much, but just a little bit higher than medium. And you really have to get to know your stove. If you're using an electric stove, it's going to be a little bit different than when you're using a gas stove or even an inductive range. Like I said, everything is going to be done to taste, and so the last thing that I have is tasting spoons. If you're cooking for guests, you don't want to be licking the spoon and putting it back into your recipe because some people are squeamish. So we're going to have a couple ready to go. We'll taste, we'll throw it in the sink, and we have a clean spoon if we need to add a little bit more of anything. We're letting our oil come up to temp. We want it to be loose and shimmery is going to be the temperature that we want. You can put your hand over it. Right now it's cool enough that I can leave my hand there. When it's bright and shimmery, when it is ready to fry these cutlets, I won't be able to leave my hand there very long, maybe 3 or 4 seconds I would be able to leave that there. I use a good thermometer. This is a Thermopen. It's a digital thermometer. What I like about it is the sensor is in the very tip. You don't have to put it very far into your food to get an accurate reading of what your food is. It lights up and it is extremely accurate. And we do food temps for food safety. We don't want to be sickened by our beautiful recipe that we've created, right? We want some minimum temperatures for our meats. That oil is becoming loose. It's looking shimmery. It's maybe almost there. Almost there. I'm going to turn the heat up just a little bit, and then we're going to be ready to go. Okay? Now, we've already breaded our cutlets. All we want to do is just kind of freshen up. Okay, we want to shake off the excess. Okay, because we don't want our dish to be too floury. Just drop that right in there. Everything is dropped away from you. The reason for that is if you drop it towards you, you're going to splash hot oil onto you, so everything is done away from you and cooking. Quick wash up because we were handling raw chicken again. And what we'll do is I like to have a fork. And I keep a fork and a set of tongs. When I'm turning food, I turn my food while part of it is still raw with a fork. Okay? Once both sides are beyond the raw stage and I'm not going to be getting any raw chicken juices on my tongs, then I switch over to my tongs to flip things back and forth. But you don't want to use your tongs to flip raw meat. You can, if you have 2 sets of tongs, you can use the first set to turn your raw meat and then switch over to your cooked food tongs. These are looking and starting to smell really good. Now, I did not get them perfectly cut. One is just a little bit thinner than the other, but they are both within the same range. So they're both going to cook up within maybe 30 seconds of each other. And we're just going to let that sit, and we're going to just determine doneness by one smell. You're going to smell when it starts to really get to that cooked stage. By sight, you can look at, there'll be a little bit of flour that comes off on the sides. That little bit of flour will darken up, and it'll be just about the same amount of darkness as your cooked food. And we are getting pretty close. You can actually watch the sides of the chicken. You'll see along the sides how it's cooking up through into the center. Okay? And so once we have one side done, then we can flip it over. We'll take a quick look at it. It's not quite as brown as I like, and so we're going to let that stay on for just a little bit longer. And what I like about this recipe is it's quick, it's easy. At the very end, it looks very fancy. It looks like you've prepared a fancy meal, when in reality, all of the prep will take maybe 15 minutes, and the cooking itself should take anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes, depending on how fast you move and how fast your oil is. The pasta water is starting to look good, and so it's coming up to a boil. So we're going to add our pasta now, so that it finishes at about the same time. Just going to put that right in there. I'm going to use another set of tongs. I'm just going to get those noodles all the way down into the water. This pasta takes approximately 12 minutes to cook. Now, we're looking at our breast. That is beautiful. That is a nice golden brown. And we'll flip the other one. That pork goes in the sink, and we'll now be able to move to our cooked food tongs. We're going to give this a little bit of a shake. What that does is it gives you an idea of if something is cooking well. The olive oil will create a layer, and it'll keep the food from sticking entirely. But the food itself, once it caramelizes, once it reaches a certain stage, it will also let go. I only use non-stick cookware. The reason for that is all of the brown bits that are in the bottom of the pan when you're cooking meats becomes the basis. It's called fond, F-O-N-D. It creates the basis for the sauce that we're going to make, and it adds a layer of flavor to that sauce. So we can see that the one breast has already released. Our smaller breast has not released. And the smaller breast is now released. All on its own. If we had tried to pick it up too early, then we would be ripping pieces off of that cutlet, and we don't want that. Okay, that's starting to look good. The smaller one looks great. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the smaller one. I've got my oven set to 225. I've got a plate inside, and that's just to keep the cutlet warm while we prepare the sauce. And we'll just move this around a little bit, and we'll let this come up just a little bit more. Here in about 30 seconds, I'm going to check the temperature of this one. Because it was a little bit thicker, this is the one that we would worry more about not coming up to temperature. The other cutlet looks perfect. You can see that the juices are running clear out of it. It's got a nice opaque color to the side of it, all the way down through. This one will check. Okay. We want to come up to about 140 to 145 for chicken. We're at 130. And what will happen is when we take it off the heat, it doesn't magically just stop cooking completely. That temperature will still continue to rise, and it'll come up to the temperature that you want, especially since we're keeping it in a warm oven. And we're just going to flip that over a little bit, and that looks great. We're going to throw that in the oven as well. We're going to get out just a simple wire whisk, and we now have a little bit of oil still in the bottom of the pan. We've got that brown fond. Okay, we're going to take the wine, and the wine deglazes. Okay, we take our whisk, and what it has done is it has lifted everything out of the bottom of the pan. It has embedded itself into that wine. We're going to turn our heat down just a little bit, and we're going to add our garlic, just like that. We're going to let that garlic cook up just a little bit. Okay. Now that's not much for a sauce, right? There's not much liquid there, and so that is where our chicken stock comes in. Our chicken stock will help us to extend that sauce, make that sauce a little bit more of it. Okay. We're also going to add our chicken juice, or I'm sorry, our lemon juice. Don't add any chicken juice. We're going to add our lemon juice. We're going to add our capers. Okay. The fresh lemon slices are going to come at the very end. I'm going to save the zest towards the very end as well. And we're just going to let this come up to temperature just like that. And we're going to let that garlic release its flavor, and those capers release its flavor into the sauce there. And we're going to add our fat element. We take our butter, and this is what's called finishing the sauce. And as we add the butter, we're going to add one pat at a time. This is 2 tablespoons. Each of these is a 1 tablespoon pat that I cut off the butter. And we're going to whisk this in. This is the only part of it that you want to not be doing anything else, because we want to continue whisking so that this butter evenly melts into the sauce, incorporates into the sauce, and we don't get what's called a broken sauce, and that is where the liquid separates from the milk fats. And you'll get kind of a milk fat layer, and then you'll get a liquid layer, and it doesn't look like a beautiful sauce. Whereas this sauce looks gorgeous. Okay? Now, we're going to grab our cutlets. We're going to put them into the sauce. I'm going to flip them once so that we have sauce in it. And then I'm going to flip it back to the regular side here, or what I call the presentation side. Normally the first side that you cook, for whatever reason, looks a little bit better than the other side. I'm then going to add salt, and that is about a teaspoon of salt. I'm going to add pepper. Now this pepper adds our second kind of heat. The pepperiness, the heat from it helps to wake up your taste buds. It makes your taste buds taste everything else a little more intensely. I'm tasting spoon. Perfection. That has a beautiful, bright, lemony, briny flavor from the peppercorns. It is the perfect sauce for chicken. And so then, to plate, we take our pasta. And there's a trick that the Italians do. They will take some of their pasta water, not more than a cup. And the pasta water, after it is cooked, has starches from the pasta in it. And they'll add a little bit of that water to their sauces. And then it makes that sauce, it puts a little bit of starch into that sauce, and it makes that sauce a little more clingy. Okay, we've got our pasta. We put on our cutlet. We put a fresh lemon slice on top. Oh, I forgot to add my zest to the sauce though. Let's do that real quick here. And to incorporate it, just shake it a little bit, get it to add itself. And then I take a little bit of parsley, and I throw that on top, and you have a gorgeous chicken piccata. You've got the beautiful breast of chicken, nice and crispy. You've got the beautiful yellow of the lemon contrasting with the green of the parsley, and that's why we add parsley. Parsley will add a little bit of flavor, a little bit of an earthy, herbal flavor, but for the most part, what we're doing is we're adding a little bit of color. You set this down in front of somebody, they're going to tuck into it, and they're going to think that you have made just a fancy gourmet meal for them. Pair it with a little white wine, and you can't go wrong. This is Unprofessional Productions. Bon appetit.